This is Self-Made, a Saya podcast.
Welcome to Self-Made, a podcast by Saya. Each episode dives into personal stories of growth, resilience, and the pursuit of agency from thought leaders and everyday changemakers. This is a space for real conversations about building a life and a self with intention and purpose. I'm Nathalie, and this is Quark, co-founders of Saya. We're missing Michelle today, and we have our two guests. Excited to have two people who are completely different, in my opinion, completely different, but equally inspiring in the creative world.
And babies also. Like, we just found out right before hitting record how young and accomplished you both are. That's amazing.
Yes. I mean, I'm young too, Quark.
Yeah,
I don't know about you.
I'm the old man here. Like,
Yong has spent the last 13 years quietly growing somewhere else. Branding consultancy rooted in, I'm describing it myself, okay? My description rooted in purpose, thoughtful design, and creative integrity. As a designer through and through, Yong's approach is all about craft. Letting the work do the talking. And I mean, we are big fans. We think it absolutely does the work, does the talking. Second guest needs no introduction. I think everyone knows Tash Menon-Verheul.
yeah, so the Tash Menon-Verheul.
I call her, she's just Tash Menon to me.
That's fine.
Tash comes from a business and marketing consultancy background and has taken a bolder approach. Since launching MASH in 2017, she has been flipping traditional agency models on their heads, building global teams and redefining how brands get creative work done. Their approaches couldn't be more different, proving there's no one way to go about growth and change. But one thing in common, again, from knowing you both, you lead from the front, which is absolutely admirable. Welcome.
How lovely.
That's a great introduction.
That was such
Thanks
a
so
nice
much.
introduction. Wasn't expecting this, but yeah, great.
Aw. So Tash, you're known for your ambition and ability to make things happen quickly.
That's very kind.
That's
Thank
how
you.
we first, we first started talking. That's something that I gravitated towards. I found it really admirable.
I think you're quite similar, Nat. If you're describing those two things, you move quite fast.
For you, what drives that urgency and focus?
I guess, quite simply, I don't like to waste time. And I think time is such a precious commodity. The industry that we all work in, and work plays a big part in what we all do, but it's not everything we do. So, I sort of really like to look at my life, and when I'm spending time working, if I'm spending time with my family, or if I'm spending time with my friends, that is where my focus is. So in terms of the urgency or the appetite to move, it's sort of intuitively in me. I take a great deal of pride in whatever I do, but, I guess that has never been something that I've had to force myself in terms of trying to move fast. If I see there being opportunity or see there being opportunity to connect the dots, why wouldn't you just do it? And I guess I wouldn't really know how to describe it any other way. Do you know? It's something that's quite intuitive, I guess.
Nice. Do you actually are you very structured about this number of hours with my family?
I've had to coach myself to become like that. I think I'm the type of person that has failed as much as I've succeeded, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So in terms of how I approach what I do, it is always very considered. I'm not somebody who would just flippantly, I take a lot of intuition with what I do. So I think where I've gone wrong in my journey is where I haven't listened to that gut instinct. And I know that sounds cliche, but where I've ignored a feeling or a thought and I've just pursued it, often is where I've gone off kilt. So, when I sort of think about how I want to spend my time, it is really considered. And I think that was one of the things before we came on today. I was saying to Nat, I started my company now almost 8 years ago. Wow. And we joked about age before, but, that 8-year time frame for me, I've changed a lot as a person, and how I perceived what success looked like in my early 30s and what that looks like now that appetite and I guess approach to wanting to do good hasn't changed. How that's sort of packaged up definitely has changed. And I think that's where in the latter years, thinking about my time and how I want to shape that, both in, out, external, everything, I have been a bit more pragmatic. Whereas if you'd met me 6-7 years ago, very different. Very different, yeah.
I still need to learn that, right?
Which part?
Like being more pragmatic, being more structured in...
It's a chaotic structure. Like if you ask my husband, like he is hugely process driven.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit more, it all comes together in my own way. But
You are very structured. So I was very surprised by her approach as a founder and CEO, where she would lead meetings, like status meetings, just project status meetings, and then you would do the recap after.
And you know, that's an interesting observation. That's actually how I coached my brain to keep on track of what I need to do. So I have a bit of an internal rule with any of our teams that if you're invited to a meeting and there's no agenda set, like, and that doesn't mean it needs to be, 15 dot points and time. It's just, what is the purpose? What do we want to get out of this time that we're putting in? If somebody doesn't want to make the time to even outline that, you don't have to show up because, time is precious. And particularly now when we're working virtually and, working across so many different time zones, there's mutual respect that needs to be given, and that's something that I really believe is important because if you're just being asked to go to meeting after meeting, but you don't know why, and you can have a meeting and it doesn't need to be, military-esque action orientated, but cool. What do we need to now do from this so that the next time we meet, it's more productive?
No, but I was surprised because you were the CEO. But you have the same approach in every meeting that we've had. That Yong is there. So this is what I talked about. Leading from the front, and both of you, I think it's a very good quality as you are scaling your company. So you touched on this earlier. Now there's a small shift. You've been in growth mode for some time. And now you're thinking about, being more intentional with how you spend your time.
Yeah.
Right? What's driving
that? I guess, there's been, I think for anyone that has a business, there's learnings every day that are palpable, good and bad. And I guess for me, the big sort of shift now, 8 years in, is as a founder, you have that, this is where my secret sauce is, or this is where I can provide value. And then you find yourself sometimes where you're doing everything but that. And that was kind of where, quite honestly, I had a point probably about 12 months ago. And, you are the person that has to solve every problem that no one else wants to look at. Yeah. You are the person who is the life coach come, I guess, strategist come, parental advice. It doesn't matter what you do everything but the actual role. And I started actually questioning going, is this what I'm good at? Do you know? And it's not because my nature is like, I want the people around me to do well and feel, accomplished and have a great time doing it. But I had to, sort of put a mirror to my face and go, well, what does the next 8 years of my life look like? And I guess that was where I sort of went, the business has now become its own thing, but am I the right person to still be the key driving managing director, CEO in that? That's kind of where my sort of thinking was sort of going, because I think once you get an operation running, it's a different set of skills comparatively from when you're scaling. And I think going from startup to scale up to consolidating to then going, well, where do you play? Yeah. That's kind of where my head was really sort of banging against the walls, trying to understand myself.
Wow. But it's really amazing that, both of you work in marketing, both of you have agencies and consultancies, but it's really word of mouth that drives the business. And like you mentioned earlier, and also you, Yong, in your 13 years, considering you're a branding consultancy, somewhere else has really been driven by word of mouth. And so what's the secret sauce? What makes somewhere else so unique that that people can't help but really spread the word?
Don't really know, right, per se.
Or it's a secret.
Yeah, no, it's not that. I think, but we work well with our clients. They have a great time because we, from day one, we lean very close to the problem solving part of things, right? Everything else is superficial. Where is the problem? How do we fix it? And over time, I think we've been, I think the referrals just came with larger and larger problems or more complex issues, and we've always been able to kind of help the client navigate that, and then that's where the trust really is established. Yeah. So when people refer us, I think that's, that's kind of what they vouch for, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And now that you're scaling up, I guess how do you ensure that that intimacy and that kind of like creativity you're known for doesn't get diluted?
Yeah, it's quite tricky. I think that's also why we never attempted per se. Like I've thought about it multiple times over the years, because it's like, why do you, like yesterday I was just speaking with a friend of ours, and he's very driven to grow his business. Right, they're in a good place. They're comfortable. They could be comfortable, but they want to grow some more. And so I just said, like, yeah, I mean, why go into business if you're not trying to grow? That
They said that.
Yeah, I said that. But that's not what I'm doing. Right, because it's conflicting. It's difficult. And I think I don't say things without the intention to act. Right. So yeah, I have I harbor those thoughts and all that, but I won't say it until I feel ready.
Yeah.
Right? So what holds us back from scaling in the past is and also the culture is the culture, right? Like how do we protect the work, right? And we don't want to be pursuing growth at all costs. Right? People leave. Then what am I left with? Right. I started this thing with the idea of enjoying my own work, right? Yeah. So, how do we prevent that? Back to your question, how do we prevent that? Yeah. Ultimately, is being very clear about the core values.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And making sure everybody on board is clear about those values, and we do everything to protect that. Right. And I think then it will naturally disseminate. Then we will through the line make the right calls and all that. Hopefully, I'm sure things don't go straight all the way.
Yeah, we really feel that actually working with you, and it's actually super admirable. I always tell.
Oh, we were talking about this. So we were in a workshop with one of his teammates, right? And like she said, like her dream for 2025 is for her boss to be rich. She's just really rooting for her boss.
Wow.
That's super touching. Can't believe it.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Having done that for 13 years as well, to have captured that and kept that consistent. That's, I mean, there's so much value and accomplishment in that shouldn't be undervalued.
Yeah,
Like I think
Yes.
I think there's something really special in that.
Yeah. I mean, there are easier ways to go about doing things.
There always is. There always is.
So that's always my biggest question. Why does it have to be this hard? Like your way, why this way?
Yeah. So both of you, again, talking about how involved you are in the day-to-day of the business. We've had this discussion now where clients always expect you to be there.
Yeah.
So that becomes a challenge, no?
Yeah.
Like you, how is that going, or how would you handle that?
It's
I guess that
changed a lot
evolution.
for us over the years.
Okay.
Like I've got to say, and it was funny because I guess the mindset and our mentality as a business has always been, I don't like to use the word challenger, but because we've sort of never gone about doing what we do in a way that I guess replicates, oh, this is what we did at, this agency or that agency. Like I never worked in an agency, so I had nothing to compare it against. So, I guess our sort of mentality and approach was always a little bit like, oh, we're just going to do it our way and then see how things go. And the course of our business journey, our team has scaled significantly.
Yeah.
We then brought it back down, then we grew it again, and then and it's kind of it hasn't been linear, And I think through that, I've had the absolute fortune to have some incredible people work alongside me. Like the first employee in the business still works within MASH today, But I guess I haven't always got it right, but at the same time, getting the right people in the right roles playing to their strengths in terms of giving that level of ownership around, this is what you can own and where you can sit. And there was a time, and I sort of took a step back, there was a time where I wasn't involved in the work at all. And it wasn't because I just went, I'm out, but for at least 2.5 years, I was in different parts of the business. And that was where we had taken on, a level of investment. We were looking to scale. And again, going back to your earlier question, Nat, about sort of prioritizing how you want to play, I think I'm so proud of what we did, but at the same time, it made me sort of really personally assess, where do I want to play? Where do I enjoy being in? And I missed having that contact with clients. I missed having that contact with the work. And, that's what I was saying before. There is a real beauty in doing something beautifully well and consistently. And growth is this thing that it depends, as long as you're growing with purpose, but not for the sake of growing. It's a thing that I think it's defining which of the two buckets you sit in. And I think when you may have other stakeholders or investors or people involved, that's probably the biggest thing you have to try and manage, because they may just be looking at a P&L rather than looking at what's the work. So I like being close to the work, I like being able to have those relationships. And I think that's where it's a bit of a personal navigation of that.
To your question, I think a big part also is an ownership thing, right? When the clients come to us, I feel personally responsible for their success, you see. So when I'm not involved, I also feel like I get worried, too distant from the world, I don't know what's going on. But that is difficult, because if I'm tied up with the operations, then I cannot do the managing director part of things, right? Which is critical for the business, right?
And that's we restructured our business a fair bit this year, and for me, it was initially having to get back into that operational seat, which I hadn't done in quite some time. And I think when you are a jack of all trades and you've had to do a little bit of everything, you can do certain things and you're like, okay, I can do this, but I'm definitely not the best person to do this, And I think that's where in having that opportunity to get back into that seat, and also recognizing a little bit selfishly what I love to do, but where I know I can provide value to my team and to clients, was to go, well, it's finding that hybrid balance. You need to be able to touch the work. You need to be able to talk to your clients. You can't just be isolated to just pure growth or shareholder or stakeholder management, and in a creative industry, I think, we are in this industry because we want to create. So it's a tough balance to get, for sure.
True.
So you talked about when you first started, for you, it was only you. Again, we admire the culture somewhere else. How did you go about finding the right people that you have now? Were there big mistakes, and how did you deal with, okay, this person, mistake, go?
Tash would know this very well also. Like all the missteps, right? You don't know until you get there. and
Sorry, I'm just laughing. Yes,
right? Yeah. So at the beginning, I think very super idealistic. There's always this dream, right? And then, but we were nobody, so we would just pick whoever came along, right? And we would go from there. But I think, like, unlike many other people, I've always been very lucky with the people that joined us. Yeah. So we've never really had we never really had problem staff, really, seriously. Interns, freelancers, full-timers, they've always been quite invested. And the only difference was whether I could manage them or not. Yeah. So that's when things usually don't do well, because like wrong kind of communication styles, different working expectations, and maybe I'm not very good at expressing what is needed. Right? But the people were always ready to perform. Yeah. So that was the issues, and the people that eventually thrived better was the one that were more flexible towards me. Because I'm quite rigid as a person. So that's that. So in the end, I think whoever, it was their call. They left more often than we push people out.
So from managing staff to managing clientele, I know you really like cherry pick your clients. Are there certain red flags you look for when you're being approached, or
he is picky with his clients, hey?
Yeah, and are there points where like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to get into this?
This is where I'm not that great as a business person, because I get very inspired by the client's mission, right? So if they have a great mission, then I'm not thinking numbers already. I'm like, what can I do to help? And so everything else that's not quite that, then to me it's like a little bit, So what we try, that's why we really favor like they have a real challenge, real problem to be solved. Then we feel useful. Then we are earning our keep, right? When it's not that, then we don't get as excited, right? So the biggest red flag usually is, if the product doesn't actually do what it will say on the box. Yeah. So that's usually we steer clear of that kind of projects. Yeah.
And it's really timely, this conversation, because when you're in a pure growth mindset, and sometimes that growth mindset can get diluted by external forces as to why you need to grow.
Yeah.
And I can be the first to admit that there'd been times where I have been in meetings and my mind will go straight to numbers rather than the work. And fundamentally, if I look at what made us a great business, was because, exactly as you outlined, it was because we looked at what was, we always used to say was the leader of the company, whether that was a marketing director, a CMO, a founder. There was at least 3 or 4 key values that we would have consistent in them, regardless of industry sector. And that was something in recent time I've actually kind of gone back to basics to distill, because it made me realize in a way that I was not working in line with my own purpose as a leader. I was going, well, I want to get that balance of what growth looks like again, from rather than just look at growing because it could be a great account, and I think recognizing that early enough was again, it was an interesting self-reflection point in that, and I think a lot of agency or business founders that have gone through that growth stage who I've spoken to, it's something that when I've brought that up, they're like, oh yeah, no, I know that, like where you're suddenly going, I just need to win this account because, we've doubled our team size, so we have to, and it's just not a fun place to be in this sort of environment.
Wow. On the flip side of that, when clients look at you guys, a lot of your talent, the mashers. Sorry, I love that word, the mashers. They a lot of them are freelance, or a lot of them, they don't get orientation week, right? With Mash.
They do.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I was wondering.
Yes, they do.
Get you into
I was wondering how do you represent the culture? How to get
that
all
was
of
a
these
really
people?
big part from day one. Like if I think back to the early days and going back to our purpose of empowering individuals to have that freedom and fulfillment, a big part. Before we had client bases, we were like, we need to make people feel like they're part of something. So from year 1, week 3, it was, we built an induction program. When you were joining MASH, you were joining a community. Who are these people that you were joining with? How are you selected in here? So we never advertised for staff in those days at all, because it was all through word of mouth. And we worked on a referral only methodology, which is essentially cultivated this community of talent that was self-generating. You know, we would be like, now still we get CVs sent to us every week, but we don't actively bring people in unless they fit sort of our craft and culture sort of view of what we're looking for in talent. So, you know, it's kind of we've always been somewhat confused. Are you an agency? Are you a recruitment agency? Are you a in-housing agency? Like, where do you sit? And I used to really struggle with that question because, again, we just kind of built this being a community focused, but a highly processed driven of how we curated. So it wasn't just a collective of talent or people looking for work. It was people who were really sought after. And so I think that was where we tried to do it a bit differently, because we recognized there were a lot of collectives or freelance platforms that were just playing the numbers game, you know, and going, we have X amount of talent in this market. And we've always had a rule going, we never want to talk about numbers. Do you know? Like, it was about actually understanding. And when we were in that sort of peak growth phase in our whips, we used to do a thing where everyone had to talk about, you know, like just a couple of people that we've met in this last week. And like, you know, like who's some really interesting, fun, creative people that we've met, and share that, you know, because that still is my favorite part of the job, is the people that we get to work with, because you just get so inspired by the breadth of it.
When did you know that MASH was a real thing? Was there a time, was it the work with Netflix when you built the global writer's room, right, for Netflix?
Yeah. I think it had to be a real thing because when I started the business, I was self-funding it. So it very quickly had to become real. Like, I mean, it was either that or I couldn't pay my rent. So like, I guess the seriousness was always there from the day dot. The professionalism of how we approached what we did had to be there. It wasn't like, oh, this is cute. If it works out, great. You know, it's like, no, it kind of has to work out because it doesn't. So I guess, you know, there's so many things that I'm so proud of what we achieved as a team. And, you know, there's some people that I've had the pleasure to work with who are not only just great colleagues, but, you know, they came to my wedding, they're good friends, you know, like they're just people who I genuinely really care about. I mean, there's the Netflix one was cool. That was, you know, we were in lockdown and it was the Tokyo Olympic Games, and I got a text message saying that Netflix are looking to create a global TVC and they're looking to build an international writers' room that will be sitting across 20 plus countries. They need to get this done in literally a handful of days. And I remember telling to a couple of my partners, like going, we have to try and make this work. And they're like, well, how? And I was like, if I have to find people in Argentina, I will find people in Argentina in the next 2 days. And we did. And we did this. And then they actually came to us going, we've got another brief. That was another writer's room. And I turned that down right then because, to be honest, it was such a level up for us to get this opportunity. I wanted it to be perfect, do you know? And although it was a lucrative opportunity, we said no to that. And it actually did good for us because we've ended up working with them in similar capacities to this day still. So yeah, there's lots of, thanks for bringing that one up. But yeah, there's lots of crazy stories that, you know, when you sort of look back on it, I'm sure you've got so many as well. But yeah.
Do you have a life-changing or career-changing client experience?
I think just about every year there's a couple of pivotal clients that get us to the next level also. Yeah. Last year there were a couple. So that was felt really good. Like, oh, the strategy is totally working. These clients are all exactly the right profiles. Yeah. So we've done work for Sedeli. We're very big on local brands.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
That was
homegrown
fun.
brands and try and make help them be more competitive also. Because the landscape has evolved. Griffin Tea. Yeah.
Capella.
Yeah,
right?
Capella was pre-COVID though. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that was incredible because the client was amazing also.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, really kind lady, and I think recent years primarily obedient because for us we've always wanted to be in the FMCG space, but we couldn't get in, and then this client came to us and gave us a shot, and then that set us up for some of the other successes that we've had. Yeah.
So happy 2025, happy New Year, by the way, guys.
So happy 2025, guys.
So many changes from AI, the looming AI, to like purpose-driven marketing. So many trends, so many changes. What are you gearing up for this year? And how does that align, I guess, with the business identity and what you guys want to do with your businesses?
I think sort of that narrative we've talked about this whole time, but sort of refocusing on chasing potential rather than pure growth would be mine. And what I mean by that is I think, all of us in this industry, 2024 somewhat decimated, maybe a bit extreme, but it was a real shake-up within the industry in every shape, way or form, whether that was from, the unfortunate level of mass redundancies that people were seeing, across the board, or whether it's how technology is reshifting what we do. But I think because of that, it's forced all of us to work maybe a little bit more closely to purpose, but also being smarter about what growth means to your business. And I think part of the reflection I've sort of been doing is looking at, growth focused on potential rather than growth focused on just the icky word of sales is actually really where I'd love to just center more of my time and focus on, because that's actually so much more rewarding in terms of, I guess, getting reciprocal sort of, enjoyment around it. So, that would be my piece.
That's a good philosophy, actually. How about you? Yong?
Yes, I found my answer. So, I think past few years we've done quite a lot of good work, and this in 2025, I'm working with Saya also, right? I think we finally found the right partner to push us forward. We are looking to see what kind of impact how much we can stretch, right? Beyond Singapore.
So it's still early. You mentioned working with Saya. Any learnings so far in how you view, collaboration and growth? I know you mentioned every time you get a message from me, you're a little scared.
Yeah. I think, yeah. I think, yeah. I was just telling my colleagues about what kind of, I worry I become the parent that doesn't let the kid into the kitchen, right? Because I know where everything is exactly, right? But I also enjoy cooking, right? So that's the kind of person I am. Like, we set up the company in such a way that works around me, that is very difficult for us to collaborate with others. And we collaborate very well with the clients. But when we try to collaborate with third parties and all that, there's always this underlying friction here and there that I always find it difficult to navigate, right? And it's not on them, it's because we are too rigid. And that's something over the years is always bugged me, because we are very small and we need to work with others, but I don't know how to play with them, right? So having met Saya, I think is that kicker lah, because the timing is right. The team is ready for more. then how do we? So I'm learning to open up and let people in, and then learn their ways and adopt new methods. Yeah.
We
So-
haven't felt that you were rigid.
No, because I opened up to you already.
Yeah, it was like no first date. It's just we're getting married. It was
Yeah. So the fear for with Natalie is what if like we show her our stuff, right? And then it's like, how did you make it in to 13 years? This is all,
wait. Let's not cut.
you know.
We're
Yeah.
just-
Yeah. So there's always that fear, like.
But you know, I've got to say, I think that again, and that's been one of my, I was for a period of time too open, if that makes sense. I gave too much autonomy, too much freedom, and my nature has always been so trusting, and it bit me in the ass, if I'm going to be completely honest. And you know, part of the process of this is me fishing,
Reeling
back
in.
in. Yeah, part of me reeling back that in was going back to basics with a bit of that rigidness, because I didn't let it go because I just was like, you know, I'm letting go. I let it go in certain ways, but I probably let it go too fast in certain ways. And you know, hindsight's a beautiful thing, right? And I think it takes a level of time of distillation to consider that, but I don't think it's a bad thing either, having process. Do you know? Like,
Yeah.
I think it's to scale anything, you need a blueprint to
Yeah.
do that. And you've obviously been so successful that it's a great blueprint to build from.
Yeah, hopefully it's a scalable blueprint. So that's the part that needs a lot of work, refinement. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been great advice, guys, on basically how to scale up, how to grow. I during this whole interview process, I was just doing the math in my mind, and you both started your companies in your mid-20s. That is
30.
wild.
I was 30.
That's still very young. So
Michelle's age.
basically. So what is I guess to close things off, what is one last piece of very important advice you would give to people who want to either scale up or operate differently in their businesses?
I mean, when I was younger, I was very willing to give advice, right? And then as I get
And then you
older, I
realise
realized
you
I
don't
don't
know
know shit. You know, so it's hard. I think maybe the why needs to be very clear first and foremost, because most of the time, you know, we read about it, right? That founders find themselves in a place that they don't enjoy. Yeah, end of the day, then what's the point? Yeah, so that's the hard part too.
I mean, I think I share the same sentiment as you, to be honest. I think the more you do this, the more you realize the less you know. But I think, you know, I took a lot of chances, and I don't regret any of those chances. I back every decision I made, good and bad, because I think the good decisions are wonderful because they're great stories to tell in terms of, oh, do you remember that time we did this? That was pretty great. The bad decisions are horrible because you feel every single punch that you get. And I think the thing when you start your own thing, it's kind of like you're walking around, you know, undressed, because you kind of have, everyone can see everything. And when you're on the up, everyone wants in. If you're going to fall, people are like, ooh, what's going on? So I think, you know, if we'd had this conversation 18 months ago, my answer would have been a bit different. I think me now looking at sort of the one thing I would say for anyone who is like, I want to grow my business, is just be really clear why you want to do it. Because growth has this perception around opportunity, which is exciting. And it's something that is, you know, we all want to do well. We all want to, you know, punch down walls and do great things. But if you're not doing it in line with your real reason and purpose, and and you need to build the right team around you to deliver that, that can get confusing. But if you get that, that's also the best, like, fun that you can have as well. Because that was the thing that sounds a bit cliche, but it is a really enjoyable thing to go through. So I think just being really clear why you want to do it, and not be succumb because, oh, I've been doing this for this long, and I should just now try to do it. You know, I think that's the.
So you talked about failures earlier, and you're like happy to have gone through them. You learn things. Could you talk about one failure, both of you, that if you were to relive that, you would do it differently?
You can go.
Okay.
You seem prepared.
I'm
I was
super
like,
prepared.
I'm like that. I'm going for a Rolodex.
With the glass half empty, glass half full.
Yeah.
Because I felt so much. Yeah. So I've a lot to draw from. I think the biggest would be, the biggest would be how I used to deal with stuff. Yeah. I was never that nice guy. Yeah.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, I was as mean as it gets, you know. Like I think I couldn't handle the pressure. That's one, right? And we were trying to build a reputation, so I really drove people hard, right?
Okay.
But at that time, I think the mindset was like, I'm helping you reach your potential and stretch it,
Yeah.
right? But I didn't have to go it that way, lah. That's one. The other one, you also asked about like, you know, when are people the right fit and all that. We've had people that were over time obviously the wrong fit for the mission, but I didn't know, you know, that I was keeping them out of kindness when actually is worse off for them. Yeah, yeah.
I've done that too.
So that was terrible. So I think these two big failures. If I could go back, I would totally change the way we operate, and we will have better successes earlier on. Then we lost some good people. So many good people.
Yeah, I think. Oh man, there's you could categorize that question into so many different ways. You know, like I started MASH because I got fired from a job. So I think for me, one of the things that I've always focused on is how you reposition failure, because I think in today's culture, failure is such a, like, people don't like talking about it. And I think it should really be spoken about. I think it should be spoken about because starting a business isn't glamorous at all. Do you know? And I think I said earlier on, I've failed more than I've succeeded. And I'm actually really proud of that, because the fact is every time you get a hit or a knock, rather than taking it personally, as hard as that can be, and I'm not preaching here, because there are times that I've been knocked and it hurts, or, you know, it's something that I don't have. But how do you understand why that's happened? And having the humility to acknowledge that and look at that, you know, we scaled too fast at one point, you know, way too fast. We hired people who are exceptional hires, but they weren't right for us, you know? And I think that's where, you know, in terms of that transition as a leader, whereby you're at one point running a startup, you then have a small team, and that's like the glory period, because you're all in it. You're all, you know, building, driving, growing something. Everyone has that sense of ownership. Then you bring new people into the family. And, you know, I think part and parcel that you need to sort of be looking at is, well, how do I show up to be the best I can be in my driver's seat to bring the best out of other people? And I read this really good analogy the other day where, you know, a lifesaver, like in a you know, at the beach or whatnot, if someone is drowning, you know, what they don't do is dive in and try and just carry them. They'll throw them a buoy, because if you try and carry them, you'll get pulled down as well.
Yeah.
Do you know? And one of the biggest lessons for me was my nature has always been, I want to, like, I genuinely care so much about the people I work with that I was spreading myself too thin to try and actually be the best leader for the people in my team. And, you know, that analogy, when I read that, I was like, oh, that resonates with me so much. Do you know? It's understanding as you grow, you can still be that sort of, have that level of humility, have that level of compassion as a leader. But you need to be able to draw boundaries. And, you know, Nat and I both love basketball. It's kind of one of those things. It's like you can set up an assist to get someone to win. But how many assists do you set up before you recognize, hold on, I need to change my tactics to actually make sure we can score. And similar to what you just said, there's been times where I've just kept setting up assists out of goodwill because and I should have gone, no, hold on, I need to reshape how we do this rather than extend it out. And, I think that's something, again, just having that awareness of what I need to change to help elevate, at the same time recognize the pieces of that. Is that a failure? Like, I think it's a great way to build from here, but it's just something I am very passionate about. I think people should talk about more openly because
I think especially with social media or LinkedIn, everyone's just celebrating successes.
Oh my God.
All the time.
God.
LinkedIn,
Happy
don't
to
get me
announce. So great, so blessed that. I tried to
Humbled
avoid.
and blessed.
It's just, and it's funny, like you mentioned that. I was saying this just to someone yesterday, like without going to, but like I think a platform like LinkedIn has, particularly this year, evolved a lot in terms of how people are talking about themselves, which kind of made me just want to step back a little bit, if I'm going to be honest. It just didn't seem authentic. I just was like,
It's like how Instagram was basically like in the mid 2010s, right? Where it's like
it's the ugly filters. It's the filters.
hashtag blessed.
Yeah. It was like when there was 9 filters and we were all like, had really rosy cheeks. So
I think it goes back to, I think two things similar, or the two themes, it's having the self-awareness, right? Like, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are you really good at? What do you want to do? What do you not want to do? But not a lot of people have the time or are consciously doing that, like reflecting. We talked about in our previous episode, because sometimes at work, you're just surviving. You think you're thriving because it's fucking busy. You just need to get to it. So you need to get to a point where like, fuck, it's been 6 months and I'm just surviving. I need to stop. How can I thrive?
totally.
So being mindful of like the pauses and, reflection.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So on a personal level, how do you guys see yourself growing this 2025?
So I turned 40 in 24, right? So right from the get-go, I started, midlife crisis basically, right? So I'm prior to that, I also was my identity is the work, right? And I used to enjoy it, but then it's like, okay, if the work's no more there, then how, right? So the past few years I've been working actively to reclaim my identity. And 2024, I was a lot more intentional. I realized that, it's just by doing other things and like learning a bit more mastery in certain stuff, then that is an extension of my identity already. So once it became clear that this was the way, and then I just did a lot this year. And,
Of what?
So I do trail running now, right? And then I just ran a marathon. I make pizzas now.
Oh my
Right,
gosh.
but like up to there's a certain standard I'm pursuing, right? But by exploring this stuff, I meet more interesting people, inspiring people as well, and I don't know, I'm learning a lot from them. That so next year I just want to be even more intentional about it and just not be so shy and then just like be there and then see what happens.
Love it.
Yeah, because I think COVID really did a good one. That really reset a lot of my behaviors also. I just went more insular, I think. Yeah.
I'm really excited about this coming year. And I think I sort of unknowingly spent a lot of time. I didn't intend to do this, but 2024 for me was a huge year of reflection and consolidation. And in all aspects of my life, going back to your first question about time, it's being successful in every aspect, but sustaining it. And what I mean by sustaining it is, I think I can't say too much just as yet, but I think going back to basics in terms of when I started MASH, there was a way of working that I really aspired to have, which for me, I live in Australia. My professional experience prior to moving back to Australia was 15 years in the UK and Southeast Asia. And I wanted to forge a life that allowed me to connect and work with people in these international markets, because that's how I get fed. I love working with people who are not more intelligent, but just have a different perspective to me. And I could never work out, how do I make that as part of my living? Do you know? Unless I join a company and then have to do that, And there was this common thread of, being able to forge relationships and create impact. And that's what MASH is, like in a simple way. We build teams, we forge relationships, and we curate them and we put them into businesses. And I guess my sort of focus now for this year coming is, what's the next evolvement of that same thought? And, I got married 2 years ago now. My husband and I want to have a family. Like, there's lots of different aspects to my life, unlike when I was 30 and started MASH. I was like, I want to grow this business. I want to scale. I want to be da-da-da. And that was awesome. And that was a great journey with that. And I'm still driving that. But I may just play a slightly different role in and amongst that. So, yeah.
That's lovely. Thank you, guys. Yeah, no, I learned so much, and it was like, it's hardly an hour. So, it's it's so hard already, just kind of being a founder for a company, and now just seeing your adventures and misadventures and your successes and what you perceive to be as failures in kind of like scaling up is just making us a bit nervous, but also excited for what's to come. So thank you, both of you. You're really inspiring people, and we love working with you. And
congratulations to you guys too.
Thank you.
Exciting.
Yeah, we too hope to give that scaling up talk. Next time, it's gonna happen.
Matter of time.
It's the best thing, because you're so exposed. That's I think
Yes.
the great part of it. If you're happy with being exposed in that way, it can be confronting, but the amount you grow through that process, that's addictive. Like, I know that's the part for me. If I look back over the last 8 years, there would have been so many times that would have been so much easier just to go, let's quit. Let's close this off.
Yeah.
This is too hard. And then you sort of go, but
I
this
like
is
the
good.
process of iterating.
Totally. Just evolve. It's like you
Yes.
evolve, or if you don't evolve, you die.
Yeah.
That sounds
Change or
drastic,
die.
but it's kind of true. So it's how do you stay true, but how do you continue evolving to that truth?
Yeah.
And I think when you lose track of that truth, that's when you can grow incorrectly.
Yeah.
Do you know? So
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To 2025.